Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
This is Fish Jelly.
Huh.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is from like earlier in the week, but did you see that comment Barbara Streisand left on one of Melissa McCarthy's Instagram posts?
Something about Ozempic. I saw there was a blow up about it. And she said she was trying to give her a compliment or something.
Yeah, Melissa McCarthy posted a picture of her with Adam Shankman, and Barbara Streisand commented underneath, "Give him my regards. Did you take Ozempic?" Not realizing that it wasn't like that was a public comment.
Oh.
So then Barbara Streisand tweeted, "Oh my God, I went on Instagram to see the photos we'd posted of the beautiful flowers I'd received for my birthday. Below them was a photo of my friend Melissa McCarthy, who I sang with on my Encore album. She looked fantastic. I just wanted to pay her a compliment. I forgot the world is reading." And then, of course, Melissa McCarthy basically said, like, she's so flattered that Barbara Streisand even knows she exists and was just trying to pay her a compliment, so it's not a big deal. But I thought it was funny, like, how people, like, y'all want to drag Barbara Streisand. Like, that's an older lady who was clearly not trying to be messy and act, I don't know, people act like they don't have family who say and do wild shit.
Right.
And you don't call them out. But then this stranger who's commenting on another stranger, like, you don't know either of these people, and then you're on social media
Mad.
I
do think it's of note that Melissa McCarthy's weight comes up periodically. That there's some kind of minor cultural kerfluffle about her weight or how she's dressing.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, she's a notable person, so.
No, but like that asshole Rex Reed talking about identity thief. I think he was saying shitty things, and I don't know.
Yeah, but overwhelmingly, I thought it was funny because it feels like something. I feel like most of us, our moms say things. Well, at least mine does. Like these weird compliments that are more triggering than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so to me, it sounded very familiar. I feel like my mom says a lot of things that are in a similar vein. Like, "Oh, you think you're being nice, but you're just being nosy and it's triggering me."
Yeah, it's like, why do you have to tell me that right now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all. Then Kim Fields, the actor, who's
Mm-hmm.
currently on the Netflix show The Upshaws, which is a pretty big hit for Netflix. She was on The Breakfast Club, and I've liked her for a long time. I remember watching her on Facts of Life, and of course, I love Living Single, and I really like The Upshaws. But anyway, I watched her interview, and she had a couple of cute stories. One was that Charlemagne. So Kim Fields' mom is Chip Fields, who is an actor. She did a lot of TV and theater, and I think Chip Fields is best known for playing Penny's mom on Good Times.
Oh, yes.
And
I did know that.
Penny is, of course, Janet Jackson's character on Good Times.
Yeah, she abuses her.
And Chip Fields plays her mom. And it's such an iconic character that really was only on 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But for people who don't know, Janet Jackson's Penny on Good Times was this girl who's like an 8-year-old, and her mother physically abuses her. And there's a scene where her mother, played by Chip Fields, burns her with an iron, like a hot iron.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, is taken away from her mom. And that's how that character of Penny is integrated into the show Good Times for like the final 2 or 3 seasons. But anyway, Charlemagne the God, one of the hosts of The Breakfast Club, asks Kim Fields, like, "What did you think as a young girl, like, watching your mom do this thing?" And she told a cute story that, I know people saw that and might have thought like, "Oh, this woman's so scary." But you have to remember that I got to see my mom like rehearse this. So she was saying for like a couple of weeks before they shot that scene, LaToya Jackson would bring Janet Jackson to Chip and Kim's apartment in Studio City, and they would rehearse. So she got to watch her mom with this other little girl reenact this scene over and over again. So by the time she saw it, it was just like, like it was no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Janet and Kim Fields are friends because
Yeah,
I
because I swear she's told that story before.
I had never heard it, but periodically, like whenever Janet's on tour or is doing press, you'll see like
Yeah,
Kim
Kim
Fields
feels
will post like, "Oh, I went to go see my girl backstage," or
she often pops up. You were watching something, and Kim Fields had gone to some appearance Janet made and was talking about how she knew her.
yeah. Well, I mean, her mom, Kim Fields' mom, played Janet Jackson's mom, and they're the same age,
Yeah,
and they both were child actors, and so it would make sense that
it comes up.
they know each other. But she had kind of another Janet related story because Janet a couple of weeks ago was on the Drew Barrymore show, and they asked her if she regrets, like, was there ever a role? No, they asked her, is it true that you turned down a role in The Matrix? And she said no, but actually I think you're confusing that with another role I turned down. So Janet says that she was offered the role of Storm in X-Men,
Hmm.
that of course Halle Berry played. um but then Drew Barrymore said, oh, I turned down a role, I don't know what role it was because I haven't seen Boogie Nights, but she turned down some role in Boogie Nights
Probably Heather Graham.
to play or to do the movie Ever After.
Hmm.
But Kim Fields, so then they asked on the Breakfast Club, they asked Kim Fields, oh, was there ever a role that you turned down that became iconic? And she said, no, but I have kind of a fun story in reverse. She said that she got a call saying that she was offered or being considered for the role of Storm in X-Men. So then, and she had already heard that like Halle Berry,
Hmm.
um, or it might have been Halle Berry had already done the first one, and now so then she was thinking, oh, like Halle Berry doesn't want to do it anymore, so they're calling Kim Fields. So Kim Fields says that she went down to this audition and tried to dress kind of like Storm, and she was all excited and thought that it was crazy that they would consider her. And
Hmm.
when she got there, she realized that it was for the animated series to do the voice, not.
Oh, well, she got into the spirit of the thing.
She did, but I thought that was cute.
Her mother, notable to me, was also in Paul Schrader's debut film, directorial
Claudine.
Blue Collar.
Oh, Blue Collar.
And
Oh,
she's also in that. Yeah, I've never seen The Happy Hooker.
oh. Well, Chip Fields is in Claudine
Yeah,
in
like
a
a
small
bit
role.
part. Yeah.
Yeah, but she did a lot of TV. She actually played. She played on Facts of Life, I believe, as Kim Fields' daughter, and then she was on Living Single as Kim Fields' daughter, Regine's daughter or mother. So she's been a big part of her daughter's career and life. And Chip Fields is still alive. She does.
She directs too.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
she's also like a dialogue coach, which I think is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the cats
Oh.
come to terrorize us. Moving on. I wanted to complain about people who go to movie theaters
Yeah.
and get their old buttery ass popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll sit at the butter station and just dump a gallon of butter. And then they put that popcorn, like people will put the popcorn on the seat next to them.
Yeah.
I think that's so inconsiderate because that old greasy ass popcorn is on this, like, especially when the seats are not fabric. Sometimes they're like that man-made plastic leather type shit so that they're wipeable.
Mm-hmm.
So that means like if you get that seat greasy, the grease is just sitting on there. So then the next person who goes to sit down,
We'll have grease particles for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
people are trash. Those are the same people who take their shoes off in the airplane and then put their feet up on the
Mm-hmm.
center armrest.
That's right. Drag them.
That's just nasty.
It is. People don't have any etiquette, or they think people aren't watching, or don't care. Well, don't care clearly, but
So if you do that, shame on you.
you know what's worse though? On a recent flight I was on, I had a layover somewhere, St. Louis, and there was a woman behind me, clearly sick and coughing the whole time, like those little coughs. Like I was so mad.
Yeah, that's awkward because some people feel like, well, I have to get to where I'm going, and it's like,
No.
but then people don't really make an effort. Like, put a mask
Well, it's
on
like, yeah,
there,
put your do something to
show something.
like we can all hear you.
But anyway, moving on to the restaurant section, we tried a new restaurant called Joyce,
Yes.
which is in downtown LA.
Mm-hmm.
It's off Grand. It's in the same kind of structure as the Whole Foods in downtown LA.
Mm-hmm.
And we I knew we had walked by that space a number of times, and I guess I never considered any of those restaurants as like places I'd want to go. I don't know
Hmm.
why.
Well,
Probably
there's
because of the parking,
parking, and they're on the expensive side.
but um, it didn't occur to me like, oh, just park in the Whole Foods parking, which is what we did.
Hmm.
We did buy something at Whole Foods, so it's not like I totally cheated the system. But anyway, Joyce is a restaurant that is the menu centers around soulful Southern fare
Hmm.
with an emphasis on sustainable seafood, offering an extensive raw bar program and selection of fine American caviars. So, from the sound of that, you can predict that it was spendy.
Yes,
But I thought the food was really good.
I liked everything that we got.
You got the duck confit, and it was funny because it wasn't cheap. And they gave you, I mean, ducks aren't big, but you got a little duck
I
thigh.
got duck leg.
And then, of
Yeah,
course, you were like, when I'm in Toronto or wherever,
Berlin.
Berlin, for half this price, I get an entire duck.
Yeah, I get a whole big duck breast at some of those Chinese restaurants.
But I mean, the flavor was really good. We got their mac and cheese. That was good. It was served in like a hot skillet.
Hmm.
And of course, the best part is all the cheese that gets burned to the skillet. We got some cornbread, which was really good, some
Hmm.
catfish. They had an interesting dish. It was like, I've never had green cauliflower.
Hmm.
Or did they paint that
No,
cauliflower
there
green?
you can buy green cauliflower.
And it was served cold, but like with hummus.
Hmm.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was good.
It had a lot of flavor, and it was a nice contrast to the piping hot food.
Yeah, well, and some kind of vegetable.
But I was trying to read about this because they didn't, it was, I did think it was overpriced for what it was.
Yes.
And then, like a lot of nicer restaurants, you order your meat and then you order your sides. But this restaurant didn't even really have that many sides, and the things that you would consider sides were priced like entrees, and
Yes.
they were not. I mean, the servings were very small, and they have the nerve to say like plates to share. Those,
The duck confit isn't a place to share. You need two legs. Then you need
yeah,
two duck legs. I'm not sharing a leg. Like what's to share?
there really wasn't. I wouldn't consider any of those plates as shareable. So there were. We went. Our appointment was at appointment. Our reservation was at 6 at Izzy, but we were seated right next to like another couple sitting in the
Hmm.
restaurant, who I found interesting. It's the dynamics of people on a date.
Oh my god.
It was this man and woman. They were clearly on a date, and if I had to guess, I would say maybe that was their second date.
Yeah, they were comfortable enough, but still trying very hard.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And the lady in particular,
Yes.
oh my God. I don't know if she was trying to earn her free meal. I don't know what she was doing, but she was putting on a show for this man.
Well, they got a lot. I don't know if they'd not ordered food like that before, but it seemed like they.
They ordered way more than we did, and I thought that we ordered quite a bit.
Yeah, we didn't need more. But I mean, the thing about this restaurant is the proportions are wildly off for some things, because you could get because they got the hen and the sea bass, and that was a whole fish and a whole chicken with biscuits.
Right. Yeah, it was really odd like how they
Like how you get so you can get a whole Cornish game hen or whatever, and I get one duck leg.
well, for $40 I get a little bitty leg. Okay.
I should have gotten two legs.
Yeah. But I was reading more about the restaurant because it felt like it you could call it southern, but it really, I mean,
That's why I chose for us to go there, because I was curious about that. But to me, and again, we didn't try the raw bar or any of the seafood, but uh, it didn't have a southern vibe to me.
no. Well, and then because then you sent me the information, and I didn't bother to read much about it until we were on our way, and then I thought, oh, it's like soul food, but really it's not. It's like it says, soulful Southern fare. It it definitely feels more gourmet, like that's what they're going for. But
Yeah,
anyway, I was trying to read like who is this chef, because the everyone in the kitchen and like the manager, the only black person was our server. So I'm like,
yeah.
who started this restaurant? The chef and co-owner is a white man,
Oh,
and then
who at Joyce?
and the other co owner is this married couple, a black man and an Asian lady. And so then I'm like, well, where'd the name Joyce come from? Joyce is the name of the couple, the black man and the Asian lady. Their daughter's name is Joyce, and her grandmother's name is Joyce. So Joyce, this like soul food restaurant that has pictures of black women,
Yeah, I was like, is one of
like
them Joyce?
yeah, because there are these huge portraits, like three big portraits in the restaurant of black women. Joyce is the Asian lady's grandmama. So Joyce is the Asian lady, old Asian lady. I don't have a problem.
Interesting.
I don't have a
No,
problem with any of this. I just think it's really funny that um, it just feels like a very sort of like modern take on things. It's like, when you go to Venice, we used to go to this Mexican restaurant in Venice, and it felt very much like, oh, you know,
which one
like
was
in
that?
the one we used to, the one across from Whole Foods
Oh,
off
isn't
Lincoln.
that on off Abbot Kinney?
No, well, it's close, but it's off Lincoln.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When we used to go with a couple of friends.
Something Lindo
Is it no Cielito Lindo is in off
Olivaro.
Olvera Street.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, but it's kind of what you would expect, like
That's
a Mexican restaurant in like a predominantly white upscale area where it's
yeah.
like it's kind of spendy. It's like they use words like authentic, and that's the place. One time I ordered pozole and they brought the pig's foot in the bowl.
I
And
know I got the pig's foot in my
I'm like,
spoon,
in
and I
all
was
the Mexican food, like in all my experience of Mexican food at every place I've been, no one has ever brought me this pig's foot in the pozole except this old upscale Mexican restaurant in Venice.
yeah.
But
We were with my mom. They did. I remember liking the artwork in that restaurant though.
it was a very cute restaurant.
Well, because there were depictions of like violent Aztec massacres on the wall.
But it's just interesting. A lot of these restaurants that are like fusions of things, and I think it's lovely because it's showing sort of the evolution of society and culture, right? Like more cultures are sort of blending, and there's a greater appreciation for different cultures. So I think it's really nice.
Yeah.
But they're manifesting in these overpriced restaurants that have like uncomfortable seating and are hard to get to, right? Because they're in these like densely populated areas that don't have convenient parking. So it just kind of feels like, would I go back
To Joyce?
Would you?
I liked my food, but again,
I like my food too.
it felt like a special occasion place, though.
I think because of the parking, again, because I just parked at Whole Foods and it wasn't an issue, that really isn't a big deterrent. But I don't know.
I think the best thing though I liked was that cornbread, and I make homemade cornbread, but whatever was in that butter, oh my god!
Well,
Yeah.
the butter was super salty and had
Mhm.
some sweetness to it, and then I
Mhm.
had I have to say, all the food was very hot except for the dish that was not intended to be. But the way the butter melted onto the cornbread, it was very salty, very buttery, decadent.
Decadence, yes. I want more of that, but I can probably make that.
Moving on to films released, we didn't cover
Oh.
Jean Dubarry.
Jean Dubarry, which I wrote about exactly a year ago because it opened the 2023 Cannes Film Festival, directed by Mai Wen, whose films I don't usually care for as a director. And notably, it starred Johnny Depp as Louis XV, who falls in love with this, whatever she was, a scullery maid, and their romance that scandalized the courts. It's not very good. But there was of course an uproar because of the Johnny Depp controversy, and then him showing up on the red carpet. I don't know why people were so mad, but they were, I guess. And then around the same time last year, Mai Wen had spit in a waiter's face, I believe, was the news story.
Oh, that's right.
But it's not. It's definitely not a good movie.
The Idea of You.
Let's table that because I did watch that without you.
Oh,
with Anne Hathaway.
Oh, so that means we're going to talk about it on
Yeah.
the podcast.
Oh, yes.
Oh, so I need to add that to the list so I don't forget.
It's on there.
It is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't see it. On the movies you watch for fun?
Yeah, it's at the very last one.
Oh, you're right. Administration, bills and loans.
Yes, Madonna. Come with me.
Turtles all the way down.
I had absolutely no interest in this, but
I like totals.
To-
I like totals.
Hannah Fields directed it, who we watched something with her. Banana Split. I don't know. She's a young woman, and her work ethic is impressive, but I don't think I'm interested in this film.
Tarot,
This is one of those films. Sony, the press screening was at 10 a.m.
the
on
day of.
on Thursday, the day that because you can see early screenings on Thursday night. So that's always a bad
To give
sign.
context, the last time I went to a Sony screening at 10 a.m. the day of, that was for Fantasy Island, I think.
No, you did it for 65 as well, the Adam Driver
Oh,
movie,
also not a great movie.
and I think I did that for the Pope's Exorcist.
I don't know. Like, it's so obvious when they do that this movie's going to be shit.
Yeah, like
Like, why even bother? Just don't even screen it
yeah, right. Like, so you're gonna make me trek over to fucking Culver City at 10
to get a
a.m.
3-hour head start on the shitty movie.
Yeah. So no, I think I had much preferred that because I'd seen it already and was curious of your thoughts. I saw the TV glow instead.
I rarely watch film reviews on YouTube, but I did watch one. There's the very, very popular YouTuber Jeremy Johns. I watched his review of Tarot, and he thought it was shit. So,
Directed by Spencer Cohen and Anna Hallberg. One of them wrote Moonfall. Speaking of terrible Halle Berry film,
oh, next, Evil Does Not Exist.
this I reviewed out of Venice last year, and I am a big fan of Raisuke Hamaguchi, who's probably best known for Drive My Car. I prefer Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, but this is probably my least favorite of his films. But again, it's worth seeing. It's about, and I think it won an award out of Venice. It's about a small family in Japan, or a father and daughter in Japan. There's part of a small community, and this um, luxury camping company wants to come in and kind of take over, and it would cause a lot of changes to happen. And it's about kind of the community rallying about over what they should do.
Mars Express.
This sounded interesting. It is a animated film directed by Jeremy Perrin, and it has a lot of interesting people that I like in the voices, including Leah Drucker and Mathieu Amalric. I think they're married. Uh, yeah, if you like anime, there's a new title of interest.
Next, Slow.
This I reviewed out of Sundance 2023, and it was Lithuania's official submission for Best International Film, I think this year. But it's directed by Maria Kavatards, and it's about a couple, and one of them identifies as asexual. So it's them trying to kind of navigate that between them.
I watched a documentary about asexual people last year. It was interesting because, like, watching couples who like neither has any interest in sex, it from what I remember, it was more about like other people questioning them.
Oh, sure.
Which is like, if these two people are fine,
then
like,
let
stay
them
out
be.
their business.
Then let them be. Let them. I mean, they're probably saving so much time and have so much less anguish.
But of course, the ones who are trying to interact with people who don't feel the same, of course, creates a lot of interesting scenarios.
Oh, and what's a new term I hear more now? Gray sexuals.
What does that mean?
I don't even remember.
Oh,
but
is that like demisexual?
Kind
doesn't demisexual mean you're supposed to have like a
kind of like an
intellectual connection?
Yes.
Okay, gray sexual.
Isn't that also sapiosexual?
It's gray sexuals within the asexual spectrum.
They are
also, they experience some level of attraction. Girl, come on. I'm going to be one of those old men who's like LGBTF LMNOP. Like,
well, I just don't know how much you have to whittle down classification on everything. You feel like having sex today and not tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah, like, I mean, it just seems like there's this. So then, is there like a constant barometer that you need to announce the reading of? It's like, oh, so you're just not super. I don't have any expertise in this. I'm not a sexual therapist or research whatever person, but this sounds like.
I think we can just. I don't know. Is it because we force people to explain themselves? And again, I like it's it's like what I love about the German language is they have such specific words for meanings and feelings and situations, because I think English doesn't quite have a lot of words that to really drill down and describe some things. But at the same time, why are we always having to explain ourselves to the nth degree?
Oh gosh, I I didn't even, well, maybe I'll no.
Oh,
I'll table that
okay.
till after we take a small break. But continuing with the next movie, Something in the Water.
I know you wanted to watch this. The publicist even offered me a screener, and I said I'd take one, and she didn't send it. But another shark movie.
Oh, I wanted to see
I
that.
know you did.
I mean, the trailer looks like it's going to be garbage, but I probably still would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, Haley Easton Street, I believe, a debut. Yeah,
Unfrosted.
Jerry Seinfeld directed this, a Netflix release.
Oh, the Pop Tart movie.
Yeah, isn't Melissa McCarthy in that?
Oh.
Well, I thought you said you
I was
wanted to.
I was trying to think of something Ozempic and Pop Tart, but I couldn't.
She can have as many as you want on Ozempic, can't you?
Lastly, Wildcat.
Ethan Hawke directed this, I believe, starring his daughter.
Okay, now we can take a break.
Oh yeah.
As people may know, I hate listen to Neil Brennan's podcast Blocks, and a while back I had said like I would love to hear from licensed therapists about what they think about this show, Blocks, which is, for people who don't know, Neil Brennan's a comedian who did a comedy special talking about his mental health, and then now he has a podcast where he brings on famous people to discuss their mental health issues, and he, in his way, therapizes them and pontificates about things and shares the same 3 stories about him and ayahuasca and DMT. And anyway, I find him like unbearable, but I can't stop listening. So I guess I'm a hater. Anyway, I manifested having a private conversation with a therapist
Mm-hmm.
about Neil Brennan and his podcast. So this person is a friend.
Uh-huh.
So we got to have a nice happy hour with the therapist and her husband, who's a good friend of yours,
Yes.
and our old friend,
Yes.
and good friend.
Yes, both. Mm-hmm.
But so we decided it would be fun to listen to an episode of his. So we went back into dug in the crate and listened to an episode from a year ago of Neil Brennan with Hassan Minaj,
Which she chose.
which she,
Not to drag her, but she didn't listen to more than 20 minutes of it.
well, I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt very validated because the therapist didn't even get through the episode because they were kind of annoyed by this person. And I think we all, the 4 of us all agreed that it was grating. So
I think I would actively avoid Hassan Minaj now.
well, there were 2 things that I got from the episode that made me think about whatever we were talking about in the film's release we didn't cover that I just lost track of. But the that I was going to reference, about gray sexuality.
Okay.
But anyway, I'll get back to that. But what you just said, if I were, people say all press is good press, and I mean maybe in this current, in this day and age, but I don't know. Hassan Minaj, I didn't know who he was before listening to the podcast. And afterwards, I thought I would actively avoid him in anything. He was so obnoxious, so pretentious. I mean, the definition of trying too hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and so out of touch. So then you have these 2 people who are so full of themselves, and it felt like a dick measuring contest. Like they were just jerking each other off, but also talking over each other. So just not relatable content.
Well, it's just Neil Brennan. It's like these 2 successful comics, right? And to be successful in any shape, way, or form in the industry, it's difficult. You should be, applauded for sticking it through to the end and following your creative vision. But these 2, it's like we have to just brown nose about these specials. And Hassan Minaj, he's like, oh yeah, I was 30 and I did this brilliant special about being obsessed with the prom. Girl.
I have to mention, I usually listen to Blocks, but for this episode I thought, I'm going to watch it, because every episode of the podcast is like the actual recording is available on YouTube. So I thought, oh, I never watched it. Let me watch this one. And immediately, because I think Neil Brennan looks like, I don't think he's a cute man, but what, like immediately when I saw him in this interview, I thought, oh, I hate his hair. I hate it. And then what's the first thing out of his mouth when the interview starts? He tells the audience, oh, you might notice my hair looks really great today. It's because my guest has great hair, which Hassan Minaj does have nice hair. But I thought that was so funny because the first thing I thought when I saw Neil Brennan's hair was, I hate that haircut. It also doesn't match his style or personality.
In the bitch fest that we had, the private bitch fest about this, I didn't even get to something that really rubbed me the wrong way in this interview. Was he's preparing to make a movie, and he's reading a book by the great Sidney Lumet about making films. And he's just like, I'll never, all these classic films, I don't have the time to watch. Murder on the Orient Express, the original one that Lumet directed, I'll never have time to watch that, because they both agree that they've learned that whatever's most important to them is their own creative project they're working on. And while part of that is true, it's also like, so you're just never going to make an effort to look at what some masters have done in the craft that you're experiencing beforehand. So you are going to create something, and then, so shouldn't we all have the same attitude about your bullshit? Like, who's going to watch don't you want people to watch your bullshit at some point?
Right. But getting back to the gray sexuality, at a point, Neil and Hassan start talking about this idea of being terminally unique.
Mm-hmm.
And how insufferable that is.
Mm-hmm.
While listening to two people be insufferable was
Interesting.
mind-numbing. But so then getting back to gray sexuality, I think that maybe that's part of it, is that people want, as Janet Jackson said in The Velvet Rope, we all have this need to feel special. And I think that's part of that. Like, people want to be defined, and
oh yeah,
people push back against labels, but then people also hold on to those markers as like something that makes you special. And I
think this week we were talking also a lot about autism because of this interview we listened to, and Amanda Seales, of course, which actually I took an online autism test. But
it turns out it's low probability Nick is autistic.
My
diagnosis remains the same, that you're just difficult. But
you kept saying that I'm like Amanda Seales, and then all of these things I heard Mr. Brennan say. I was like, God, should I take this test? But I was curious. But part of that Neil Brennan thing was they were talking about these autism tests, and that how people answered them based on getting the result that they desire to get, the diagnosis they want, and this notion of these 20-something privileged white women trying to skew their answers so that it shows up that they have autism because it makes them feel special.
yeah. And getting sidetracked again, but I think at one point Hassan Minaj says one of his blocks is ADHD, and Neil Brennan goes, oh, when were you diagnosed? Oh no, I'm self-diagnosed. And then I thought it was ironic that Neil Brennan's telling him like, oh, well, you shouldn't self-diagnose yourself. So says the comedian who acts like a therapist on a podcast to,
right,
a large audience. But yeah, I think a lot of that is happening too. Like, and I'm not a healthcare or mental health care professional, but I think it seems like a reasonable person would agree that self-diagnosing can be dangerous because you could misdiagnose yourself.
Well,
and so then a real underlying issue could go unchecked. Or people who self-diagnose often self-medicate. Mm-hmm. And then we know that can be a problem because that manifests in all kinds of weird things.
Or you can self-diagnose and get on a very popular podcast and talk about your diagnosis, even though it's not real. And then that causes a strange cultural ripple effect.
Well, the last thing I was going to say is I think people use these self-diagnoses to excuse behaviors.
Yes.
Because that's a very common thing I deal with, is being told like, well, I have anxiety, and this is why I'm doing this thing, or this is why I'm acting in a way that you find unsavory. And it's like, that may be legitimate or not. Either way, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, to me, it's an excuse. And I don't like excuses. Like, that can be very real for you. And that's the thing that you're dealing with. But I still don't like it. And I still don't want to be around you. And I think, but anyway, going back to the gray sexuality, I wonder if it's a lot of these markers and labels are just people trying to be unique and special. And
Well, because think of that, if you tell somebody you're gray sexual and then have sex with them, then that makes them feel like they were special because they were able to conjure these kind of feelings that are rare in you.
or that, or it also sounds like people covering up for, inadequacies, or not being able to be mature enough to just say, like, I'm really not into this. Like, and
Right.
that's not necessarily their fault. I think society, certain cultures, certain demographics where sex is a bigger deal, with younger people, with queer people, there are certain demographics where it's the topic of conversation often. And so maybe a lot of people feel pressured to.
Well, it's very, especially I think in the gay community, sex is very desensitizing.
Well, and it's also something that I'm constantly forced to talk about and be approached with and explain myself. And
Hmm.
I think it, I could see people using these markers as a way to deflect, which in some way is like self-preservation. So I'm not totally shitting on it, but you know, it's it's the result of, people constantly being confronted with something that should be more personal maybe, but it just seems odd that people will announce like their sexuality or their sexual preferences, like, I'm not interested in having sex with you, we haven't had that conversation.
Right.
So it's a little jarring sometimes when people sort of announce their sexuality to you, and I don't mean like their sexual orientation, but more like the specifics of, like,
What they get down with. Hmm.
yeah, it's just like, oh, okay, I'm not interested, I don't want to have sex with you, so I don't know why you're telling me
I
these.
would like, we were talking about Joyce Carol Oates, and now I know that you like fisting. Okay.
But anyway, moving on to projects of interest. The Secret Agent.
Yes, by a Brazilian filmmaker I really like, Kleber Mendonça Filho. You've seen Mr. Filho's some of his previous work. You've seen Bacurau, which we reviewed, and I love Aquarius. But his next film is going to star Wagner Moura, who you just saw in the film Civil War.
Occupation.
Oh my God! So apparently Miroslav Slabishpitsky, Ukrainian filmmaker who was the talk of Europe and all of Cannes in 2014 for his film The Tribe, which is excellent, and he hasn't done a film since then. He's had all these failed projects. He was very infamously filming something in Chernobyl
Oh,
that I think didn't. The years spent on that, I think, never. I don't. There's some interesting stories behind that, and then apparently he's still developing something with Aronofsky's company, The Tiger, which at one point was going to star Brad Pitt. But now it's been announced all these interesting projects are coming out because Cannes is around the corner, so these hot market items are hitting the trades. But apparently, this is based on a news article, and it's about a family whose house is shelled during the Ukraine in the war in Ukraine. So
power ballad.
John Carney, who I like, he did that song with Bono's daughter last year, that Flora and Son, that I think we both really liked,
Oh,
and several other films. Um, Usually musical related, but Paul Rudd is attached to his latest, and so is Nick Jonas.
Flesh of the Gods.
Isn't that a great title? Panos Cosmatos, who you should all know for directing a great Nicolas Cage film called Mandy from 2018, has announced his next project. Apparently, it's a vampire film starring
Mm.
Oscar Isaac and Kristen Stewart. Miss Stewart must not be directing her feature anytime soon because it's also been announced that she's going to star in the new Kareem Anous and Albert Serra film. All of those people, well, yeah, news can be exciting. But Stewart with this vampire movie and Albert Serra, that's very exciting to me.
Alpha.
Okay, Julie Ducournau, who directed Titan, which you've seen, which
Hmm.
won Cannes in 2021, she's announced a new film, which is very exciting. And Tahar Rahim and Golshifta Farahani are attached to star.
The Ballad of a Small Player.
Edward Berger has announced his next project. He previously did the new adaptation that everybody that got a lot of attention of All Quiet on the Western Front, but notably Colin Farrell and Tilda Swinton will be in his latest.
This week on our Patreon, we reviewed Moon Age Daydream, which is
Mm-hmm.
an experimental documentary about David Bowie that was released like 2 years ago.
2022. Well, it premiered. It came out last year.
And we also reviewed the horror comedy The Cabin in the Woods, starring Sigourney Weaver.
Mm.
Unfortunately, there is an entry in the obituary
Oh
section.
yeah, yeah,
Paul Auster, an American writer and film director, died.
yeah. He has a trilogy of books I always meant to read. I never did. Called the New York trilogy, but maybe next time I'm in New York, that'll be impetus. But yeah, he died. He was 70. How old was he?
7.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, let's take another break. This week's secret film was your choice, and
Yes.
you chose the 1979 American epic war film Apocalypse Now, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Yes.
Why did you choose this film?
Because I will be seeing his labor of love Megalopolis, and from the production of Apocalypse Now, I feel like there might be some similarities. But and I haven't seen this since I was a kid, so it just felt like the timing's right, and it is a very notable film.
I didn't know anything about this movie. The title I had heard. So I
Hmm.
like if someone said what is Apocalypse Now, I would have known that it's a movie.
Hmm.
And I guess if you ask me what do I think it's about, I think I probably could have conjured that it's probably about the Vietnam War.
Sure.
Maybe if I would have known that it was made in the 70s, then maybe I could have conjured that. But yeah, I didn't know who was in this movie. I didn't know the vibe of it. But the premise: a U.S. Army officer serving in Vietnam is tasked with assassinating a renegade special forces colonel who sees himself as a god. Um, yeah, I I would call this epic. I mean, it's like an epic fantasy war film.
Well, yeah, I mean, first we probably should mention that it is sort of based on the 1899 novel Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, which is about colonialism in Africa. So Coppola has transposed that onto American interventionism during Vietnam.
The film stars Martin Sheen and Marlon Brando. Uh, Robert Duvall's in the thing. He was nominated for an Academy Award.
Mm-hmm.
We have little Lawrence Fishburne in there.
Oh
Dennis Hopper,
yeah.
Harrison Ford's in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The story is very simple. Martin Sheen is this uh, military person who's approached to do a special mission, which is to go kill Marlon Brando, this colonel who's sort of gone rogue and is talking crazy, and the military's hearing all these stories about weird stuff he's doing. He's also been charged with murder for like sanctioning the death of, I
For
believe, 4 Vietnamese people.
double agents, yep.
So the government wants him like eradicated. So they send Martin Sheen on this mission. Martin Sheen commissions a group of soldiers to get him on a boat and get him to Cambodia, where Marlon Brando is hiding out.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, I should have mentioned. So there are multiple versions of this film, and you made me watch a 3-hour version.
We watched the final cut version, so which is shorter than Redux.
And so for about 2 hours of the film, it's just not just because it's pretty spectacular, but it's Martin Sheen with his crew going up the river
Mm-hmm.
and all the things. It This movie felt like the Wizard of Oz to me, kind of.
Or even the Odyssey,
So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, some fantastical story, but a very familiar, like people go on a journey and all the experiences, and then when they get to their destination and confront the thing, like what do they learn about themselves? It's sort of that framework. But of course, you know, I think the brilliance of the story is how it builds up to meeting this figure, this Marlon Brando, Colonel Kurtz person.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's almost like they're really journeying into hell.
Yeah. And then, so of course, Martin Sheen gets there. All of his crew end up dying except for one. And then Martin Sheen confronts Marlon Brando, kills him, and then turns around and leaves.
And that you're saying that a lot faster than what happens. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But I'm doing it to show that it's, I mean, the basics of it are pretty simple. But
yeah.
what are my overall thoughts? This the cinematography is
Oh,
like,
mm,
I was trying to think of a word to describe it, and I don't know that I can find a word that I think.
it's stunning. It is so. It's That's what's funny about it is it's a horrifying film, but it's so beautiful.
I don't know that I think it's beautiful. I because I can think of other films that I think are more beautiful. I think that every every time, like every shot of the movie looks like I mean, it's just brilliant.
Mm,
I don't even know how a person could create like how do you even make a shot list for a movie like this?
right. Well,
Because they, I mean, I can only imagine they filmed like countless hours, and like just every, I mean, if you blink, I mean, every time there's a new, every time you blink, it looks like a photograph.
hmm and I think this film almost ruined Coppola. There's a documentary that his wife co-directed, who just died, called Hearts of Darkness, which came out in '91, which is about kind of the how difficult it was making this movie, including the stars themselves. Brando showed up like overweight as he was wont to do then, and didn't know his lines. And Martin Sheen apparently not only had a heart attack but a fucking breakdown.
Well, I was reading a little bit about the casting and how, Coppola started out wanting a whole bunch of different other people
hmm
besides the ones who were in it. But then, people wanting more money that was being offered, or people not wanting to shoot on location because they were afraid of getting sick, or they didn't want to
hmm
be gone that long. So, I mean, I can only imagine. And then just the conditions of the shoot look, from the looks of the film,
This
I can
looks
only imagine how arduous it was.
It looks like a grueling effort, and I think he had to edit something like 1,000,000 feet of footage or something.
I believe it.
But
I
it
believe it.
it is so gorgeous. But to me, that's in the Bible they say Satan was the most beautiful angel. That's kind of what this film is representative of,
Was that why you call me evil all the time?
because you're so
Um,
beautiful. I just call you beautiful. I don't need to call you all that.
you don't call me
You
beautiful.
call me difficult, so I don't know.
Um, well, of course, this is an epic film that many, many, many people have talked about. There's, of course, that documentary Hearts of Darkness. So I'm just
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna go through my little notes then, because I can't say anything about this film that hasn't been said. So I'm just gonna say things the way I say them.
No, but it was a pleasure to watch it with you.
Was it?
Yeah, someone for the first time, in the awe of, because my dad showed me this when I was a kid and too young to understand a lot of it, and then I had to read Hearts of Darkness in college along with Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, and talking about but I don't know, it's so fun to revisit this film. I think it is breathtaking.
The opening of the film is a shot that I think we see later on, but it's a shot of like the jungle being bombed.
Did that remind you of Tropic Thunder?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Tropic Thunder clearly,
Well, because of that, the
yeah,
snafu where their explosives go off too early.
yeah.
hmm
But I think the opening shot is taken from a shot we see later.
hmm
But what an amazing start to the movie, because then it sort of blends into us seeing Martin Sheen in a hotel room
In Saigon.
going crazy. And this is before this term was used, but I think it's safe to diagnose this person with PTSD.
Notably, he breaks the mirror in his room, which I think this is a film all about him seeing himself, or coming to examine his interiority.
Oh, I didn't even think about this till just now, but we did I've talked about the diagnosing sitcoms and movies podcast before, and
hmm
we've done 2 episodes with them.
Yes.
Or we did one on their channel and they did one on
Yeah.
ours.
Weddings to Exhale and the Terrence Howard Hustle and Flow.
Hustle and Flow. Anyway, they recently had a special guest on their podcast. They reviewed the film Antune Fisher. I know it's Antoine, but
I
I
know.
like to say Antune.
Yolanda Ross is in that. I have not seen that film.
I haven't seen it either, but apparently it's about a military. Denzel plays a military psychologist, and so for people who don't know, the DSM podcast features two licensed therapists, two Black women, and it's a great podcast. I
Yes.
recommend it. But they had a special guest for the Antune Fisher review, uh, a military psychologist.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
yeah. Man.
and it was really good, and she was very candid about sort of like how she was trained and how they handle certain diagnoses, and I would highly recommend that podcast. And I don't even know why I didn't link the two, but especially after watching Apocalypse Now and hearing this woman talk, this therapist,
Hmm.
uh, it super interesting. But anyway, getting back to Apocalypse Now, I'm going to go through my notes.
Hmm.
Martin Sheen reminded me of Rob Schneider.
Well, he's got those big. His eyelashes are so long.
He's kind of in some shots. He's a little bit of a snack.
Yeah, he's cute.
He's cute.
This is, I mean, he's been in so much, and I think he's kind of a bit underrated. But he uh, he reminded me of somebody I went to college with as well. But what was I going to say about him? Oh, sometimes he looks like a little boy.
And then sometimes he looks like a little boy. Yeah. Of course, Harrison Ford looks great. It's
Hmm.
because he was younger.
Primetime Harrison, yeah.
Um, when the officers who are, or the, I don't know what they're called, generals, the people who are commissioning Martin Sheen to go assassinate Marlon Brando,
Hmm.
they're telling him what they need to do, and they're playing a recording of Marlon Brando talking, and he sounds insane,
Hmm.
which of course is like more proof that we need to get rid of this guy. But we hear someone say, I don't know if it's Martin Sheen, but someone is talking over, saying, charging a man with murder in this place is like trying to give a speeding ticket at the Indy 500.
Yes.
Like, damn.
Well, because yeah, that's the thing. That's just an excuse to get Kurtz because he's not doing what he's acting in a godlike fashion when the U.S. military is the god.
During the scene where they're trying to convince Martin Sheen to take this mission, there's an actor named Jerry Zismer, who I think his character name is Jerry, maybe.
Hmm.
He had the worst hair, and I thought he looked like Jim Parsons.
Is that with the bang? The man with the bangs?
Yes,
Oh yeah, those bangs
yes.
were really ugly. Poor
Okay, we have
thing.
to talk about Robert Duvall. Robert du-
Before we get that scene though, what's really striking is that when they're talking to Martin Sheen, they have that little. There's that little monologue about good and evil,
oh,
which I think is also setting up themes of the film, as in sometimes good doesn't always win.
hmm. Okay, Robert Duvall's playing this officer or colonel or
Lieutenant
a
Colonel.
lieutenant colonel who, at first I'm like, this man's crazy, but
Yeah.
then it's like, this movie's crazy and he fits right in. But his performance is pretty, I mean, he was pretty captivating.
Oh my God,
And
yes.
he's like, because at first I'm like, oh, he seems like such a dick, but then you realize that he's kind of cool. Like,
Yeah, he's a good person, but he's also in this insane environment, and
and he's insane and he's obsessed with surfing. And there's like, I mean, I would say the best scene in the film is he is saying, oh, tomorrow we're going to go to this area because we need to like find some
we need
bad
to.
guys. And
Well, they have to transport Sheen's team to the boat to get
right,
on the
oh,
river.
that's right. And they're like, well, we can go this, like, to this place. And then there's this rant about how the water's good for surfing.
Mm-hmm.
There's also one of the people who's going to go on the trek with Martin Sheen, who's the only one left at the very end.
Sam Bottoms, yeah.
And he's like this sexy surfer, and I thought his name, like the actor's name, is funny.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Bottoms. But anyway, I think the best scene is them flying into the area, and then Robert Duvall going crazy because he wants to go surfing, forcing people to surf while they're being attacked. Then we get that huge explosion that I think is used in the opening. It's like, what, 25 minutes?
Yeah,
And it's just, it looks so good.
And him, but like bombs dropping everywhere, explosions happening everywhere, and Duvall is not flinching.
Not flinching. He's crazy. He takes his shirt off at a point. Like, I'm ready to go surfing. And he's apologizing to the sexy surfer. Like, I really thought the water, but like the napalm is affecting the waves. And that's where we get the famous line of, I love the smell of napalm in the
Yeah,
morning.
and Martin Sheen trying to navigate this.
And then him trying to figure out, like, how do
I get Lance away from the lieutenant colonel?
At one point, Robert Duvall screaming, like, you either surf or you fight. So then we have like two guys in the water surfing
While they're
while bombs are
Yeah.
being dropped on them. I mean, I don't, that section of the film is like who came up with, I mean, it's just so
Well,
well
it's
done.
almost like the middle of Triangle of Sadness. Like it ascends to this greatness of
Yes.
like this is so good. And then of course Martin Sheen steals.
Martin Sheen finally gets away on his boat, but he decides to steal the surfboard. And then we see that like later that night, while they're like hiding out in the river, like in the jungle, swamp water, we see that the colonel, Robert Duvall, has his people in helicopters flying around, and they're playing like on the loudspeaker a message from Robert Duvall that says, "You know how hard it is to find a board you like?
Just give it back. I'm not
Just
going to
give it
hurt you.
back. I'm not going to hurt you." I mean, that's by that point in the film, that's when I realized, like, oh, I'm in like this fever dream. This is
Mm-hmm.
like a nightmare. This shit is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there is the actor who plays Chef.
Oh, Frederick Forrest, who you know from The Rose, which we just watched recently, and he was nominated for that this year.
I
This was the
thought
same year.
I thought he was cute. He reminded me of Tom Hardy,
Yeah.
but he says that his career is that he's a saucier,
Mm-hmm.
which is a real thing. Like
So
in French cuisine, that's the person who specializes in making sauces.
I heard that, and I feel like I missed out
Which
on a
I thought
calling.
that could be a career Nick would be good in,
Oh
because Nick
yes.
loves sauces and he will waste time creating sauces to.
Oh yes, that's an alchemy. There is.
Speaking of what people look like, little Larry Fishburne's in the movie, who's like 17 or 18.
Well,
And I
there's
thought, first, he's almost unrecognizable,
yeah.
but I thought he looked like Kiki Palmer
Oh well, didn't he play her daddy,
in Aquila.
Yakila and the Bee? Is he? No, he's a
No,
teacher.
he's the one training,
Yeah,
coaching her.
but he was cute. But yeah, the first frame, I'm like, I know he's in it, and I didn't recognize him. But I think it's because the shot even, because he's also in a Rudy Ray Moore film. I think is it Human Tornado, which I remember feeling he's very recognizable in. So I think this shot earlier.
I would I would watch this movie again, like if they have like a big like IMAX big screen version, because it just is so spectacular to
Yeah.
look at, because they're on this journey on the river, and every like all these shots of like these, like plane jets that have crashed, fighter jets, and like the rubble of warfare, and like they're just going, and then there's the use of like smoke, like different colored smoke everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
that I thought was so effective, because it did feel like a nightmare.
Yeah.
But another crazy scene is all like just like we're going through this scary river, and then all of a sudden we come upon like this production, and it's a USO show where we
Yeah.
get these Playboy bunnies. And I thought that was just like,
Madness.
it was literal madness. And then of course, who thought it was a good idea to get all these
These
young men who are like
horny and
stressed
think they're gonna
out,
die.
don't have access to women, I mean, unless they're assaulting the native women, but
Yeah.
like, so then of course these three Playboy bunnies get out there and get these men riled up to the point where like they have to like flee on a helicopter.
One
And
of
then we see two guys hanging from the
yeah,
helicopter.
one of those women is Colleen Camp, who you probably recognize more as an older woman.
There's a sad scene where they're almost to Cambodia, and they see some boats, and the captain of the boat,
Albert Hall, who's very good in this.
he is very good, and his death, I got a little teary-eyed.
Him and Fishburne's death, they're very well done, very emotional.
Oh well, we'll get to Fishburne's
Okay.
death, but there's a point where they see up some boats, and the captain's like, "Listen, we need to check if these are supply boats." Like, and they go, and they end up like shooting and killing a woman, all because she was trying to like protect her puppy.
They
And
thought she
then
was hiding something.
And then
Yeah.
Sexy Surfer takes the puppy, and it's just like, oh my god, this is insanity. We also see that the boat, they get mail. How do you get mail on those boats?
Because the person that was in charge of delivering that knew that they were going to be at that last outpost, that last bridge.
You know that post op people know the post office I'm talking about, because every time I mention it I get messages on Instagram. But there's the post office, which is where we have our PO box,
Mm-hmm.
in West Hollywood on Fairfax and Santa Monica,
Mm-hmm.
that has the worst service ever in the world. I'm convinced. But I was thinking, like, these nasty bitches at that post office who are so rude, and then you think in this movie Apocalypse Now, someone got packages to these men on this boat on this river, and they did it with a smile,
And just
like,
has to call out in the darkness, is there a Captain Willard here?
yeah.
Like, oh yeah.
I mean, that's
well,
that's
think
someone
about
who cares about their job.
well, think about the Pony Express. Jesus, how difficult it used to be to get shit around.
We learned that so Martin Sheen's given a dossier, and we sort of, and he's fed information as the trip goes on, like by the mail he receives. But at a point, we learn that there was someone who was hired to do what Martin Sheen was hired to
which
do,
is Scott Glenn.
who did like 6 months ago, and
Mm-hmm.
he went out there, and then he ended up like converting to Marlon Brando's, because it's almost like he has a cult.
Yeah, it's very Island of Dr.
Yeah,
Moreau
it's
as well.
creepy. Oh my gosh. So Lawrence Fishburne, he gets a package, and it's like a recording from his mom. And he ends up their boat gets attacked, and Lawrence Fishburne gets killed, and we watch him die while the recording of his mom is playing.
Well, she's talking about him coming back.
Oh my God. Like that was so well done.
Uh,
Okay.
oh, can I say though, Scott Glenn, when we only see him briefly, I don't think he has any dialogue. He was a snack back then.
Uh, I only remember the one shot of him.
That's all. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you don't remember him as Jodie Foster's mentor in Silence of the Lambs.
I actually do.
Okay.
Okay. So we watched this long ass version that because I don't this is my first time seeing it. I don't know what parts were cut from the original, but I can assume that a scene that was cut that I did not think we needed was when they get to this French plantation.
That you're right. That was cut.
Oh my God. It just was so long. And I think I understand what it was trying to do, which was like, since it is a fantasy, maybe this was like supposed to be, because we also see Martin Sheen have sex, like have this rendezvous with one of the French women on this boat.
Aurora Clement.
But it just felt so drawn out. And then we have the one French guy like having this tantrum about how the French like lost all these battles, and so they're not going to leave this area because they won here. And I think it really fucked up the pacing and the energy.
It does. It does kind of bring things to a standstill, but at the same time, it breaks up all the boat scenes. And I like how it looks as well. But Christian Marquand, I think it could have been edited down a bit more, but I don't mind it. There's the sex scene where they're smoking opium. Martin Sheen and Aurora Clement, I think, is kind of sweet and creepy because she puts all the what do you call it hanging around the bed,
the mosquito nets,
the canopies,
yeah,
and she's naked and she's kind of pushing herself through the net, and they're both high as hell, and she's repeating a line about how there's kind of two people in every one of, I don't remember the line she said though, but there's two people in you, a man who loves and a man who kills, which is arguably on the nose, but when you're fucked up and think you're saying something profound, I think that's how people sound. It also reminded me of, there's a scene that I really like in a Guillaume Niclot film called To the End of the Earth from a few years ago. It's Gerard Depardieu and Gaspard Ulliel, rest in peace. And having rewatched this now, and that sets in the Indochina War, 1945. To me, I think that Niclot was mimicking this scene.
I'm trying to get through this because time is limited, but when the pilot or the captain of the boat that Martin Sheen is on, when he gets killed and Martin Sheen's holding him, the captain tries to strangle him. Is that what you got?
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. Why did why that choice to show that? Because then Martin Sheen kind of has to like finish off the captain of the boat.
Yeah.
So that was a little sad. Okay, the opening of the film and towards the end, we see, well, more than, I think we see it 3 times in total. We see Martin Sheen. Is he dancing or?
Yeah.
What is that about?
He's doing some kind of calisthenics. I think he's lost his mind a little bit.
Okay, well, that would make sense.
I think he's had a little breakdown.
But at a point,
yeah.
So when Martin Sheen gets to Marlon Brando basically keeps him in like a fever dream, literally. Like he just kind of keeps him locked up, but not against his will necessarily. Mm-hmm. And that's when we start to see that Martin Sheen maybe kind of is buying what Marlon Brando is selling. And
they both have similar lines about lies and how they can't stand lies, that this war has warped them, and the men that have caused it are all lying. And he, like halfway down the river, Martin Sheen says he thinks he knows a thing or two now about Kurtz. Like he can understand him.
We see when Martin Sheen he doesn't really get captured. He's just kind of held. But when he first gets held, he's like actually held in like a jail. And we see Marlon Brando bring him the head of the chef. So then he killed the chef. I thought Marlon Brando reminded me of Daniel Franzese from Mean Girls.
Oh my God.
So when Martin Sheen kills Marlon Brando, he's basically hacking at him like with a a blade.
Mhm.
And while he's doing that, we see that the people
Outside are doing the
are
same thing
doing
to
that
an
to a water
ox or a
buffalo.
water buffalo. Yeah.
And I was reading that that was a real water
Oh
buffalo they
my
had.
God, that's so disgusting to
But
see.
apparently, like, the indigenous people had already planned a sacrificial
Sure. I mean,
like ritual, so they kind of coincided. But yeah, when you see it, like, that's a real.
that scene, that water buffalo,
It was
uh,
so disturbing that I thought it was fake because it's like that can't be
they
real.
are slicing right into that
I
animal,
know. And then I think the worst part of it is when you see the water buffalo kind of collapse.
and
Like
it's
the
still
look on its
alive.
face is like, you got me, Gail.
Ugh.
Like that bothered me, of
Yeah.
course. Um, so in the end, we've realized that Marlon Brando, he realizes that it's his time to go and he wants to go out like a soldier. And then it almost seems like maybe Martin Sheen thinks that he might take over. We also see that in some of Marlon Brando's like writings that he's written, drop the bomb, exterminate them all,
Hmm.
which I was a little confused by, like, because I didn't know, maybe it has multiple interpretations, because I thought, does he think that this space needs to be eradicated, or did he want no one else to run it like him?
I think it's both
So,
because he knows that he's amassed these people together and controls them in this way, but he is also ultimately meaningless.
but in the end, when Martin Sheen gets the transmission to give the coordinates to drop the bomb on the region, he blows it off.
Hmm.
So it would seem like Martin Sheen thinks that this space should live on, but then we see him leave with the sexy surfer. And then, of course, the film just ends, or not, of course, but the film ends. So, of course, we don't know. Like, I mean, their trip up there was arduous. So then so immediately I thought, are they going to make it
I think
back?
you get the sense they might not. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't think Martin Sheen's going to make it back alive. Um, we only have like 2 minutes left, but what, what do you like? What would you give this movie?
It's a 5 out of 5 for me.
I feel like I have to give it 5 out of 5. I wish I would have watched the theatrical version,
Sure.
because I think my impression of it, like that French plantation scene, kind of, I actually had to stop the movie and take a nap. But up until then and then after, I thought it was riveting.
Sure.
It's such a unique story.
I
I mean, unique in that, I mean, it was inspired by someone else's writing, but like it, yeah. I mean, this feels like why I'm like, this is what movies are meant for.
Yeah, I agree. It won the Palme d'Or. It won Best Sound and Cinematography Oscars. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Notably, the president of the jury, Francois Sagan, this author, was told ahead of time that you will be picking Apocalypse Now as the Palme d'Or winner, and she refused. And they threatened to publish her drinking activities.
Oh God.
And so that year there were two Palme d'Or winners, this and the Tin Drum.
Oh, well, I think this is deserving of accolades for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if a person's never seen it, like I hadn't, I think a way to convince me to watch it, like if I hadn't been forced to,
Mm-hmm.
would, like, I would say, like, you need to watch it for the cinematography. It's just spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you haven't seen anything like this in decades.
No, things are not made
Like,
like this.
no one makes movies like this
No.
anymore. And Coppola makes a little cameo in the movie.
Yeah,
At
he
one
does.
point, as like a report, like a journalist who's filming
Mm-hmm.
warfare. But that's all I have for Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
Good job, Coppola. We also
Mm-hmm.
like your wine.
Oh, and Peggy Sue got married.
Your daughter's a little annoying, I think, though.
Oh, yeah. Wait till you watch Godfather 3.
The we have some things that are coming out next week. I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have to watch a few movies next week.
Yes. But we'll see Furiosa before I go to Cannes.
And I know the reviews for Hitman.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that Amy Winehouse movie, Back to Black.
Yep.
And then, yeah, we're seeing Furiosa.
The
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Ta-ta.